just want to talk a little bit more about what you can do with Seurat, and I wanted to cover more of the aleatoric samples. I think it's kind of a difficult thing to, for me at least, to grasp with samples, because as far as I understand the idea of that aleatoric music is some of the performance is left to the performer itself, so the composer leaves them kind of open to do things. So to me, like when you're sampling things, that's fixed in time, so you can't really be truly aleatoric music, because that it would have to generate something completely new, which you don't have a live performer in the computer. I guess that's just something I thought of, and maybe I'm completely off base on that. But one of the things that you can do with Seurat, though, is kind of create a randomness and almost generate something that sounds like it's new, even if it's coming from the same sample. And I'll demonstrate that here, but first I wanted to show you some of the samples that kind of had that mindset. I didn't really think about that term or what other sample libraries were doing. Like Spitfire, they have, I think it's Albion 4, and 8DO of course does a lot of stuff like that. But regardless, I did want to have randomness in certain samples just because Seurat deals with the samples across time, so you're able to get some randomness in there. So I'll just go through some of the sounds that have a little bit of that idea in mind. First, the very felt harmonics. Now, yeah, it's the same note being played, but you can hear this it's speeding up and slowing down. So that's the aspect that's more random. So if you turn on the engine, you can get more variation like that, and then changing the position of where the sample is being focused. And then adding some octave stuff kind of adds to the randomness. So that's one sample that has that approach. Then these samples, the bass mesh harmonics, they definitely change over time. So you can get a little bit of variation there. Let's see. Now this one literally is random. I just played random harmonics. Well, first this one is. So kind of randomly muting and then unmuting the harmonics. But this one here, literally just playing random harmonic notes and no real rhyme or reason for which ones I'm playing. So if you turn the engine on here, So you can get quite a lot of variation and change in the sound with the octaves and messing with the positioning, the rate, and the movement. I think these are, and also the space here. This really deals with how clustery the sound is. So if it's lower down, it's going to sound more clustered and the notes will be closer together. Or if it's up like this, it won't be as much. So if you randomize that or just do random stuff. A funny side note is we actually had to do the snapshots over several times. Somebody's waking up. Had to do the snapshot several times, and I literally felt like I was a painter. So the name rings true, I guess. So I had to paint this stuff quite a few times. But putting that aside, let's move on. So I think the things, if you want to create more randomness in Seurat, the things to focus on would be the octaves, the rate and movement, and also not turning this all the way to the right, the length here. So having it somewhere over here, the positioning here, and this space table here, and then symmetry kind of in this area. The more you push it to the right, the more it's going to be all symmetrical. So it's going to be a little more random to the left. So those are the things I think, if you want randomness to focus on. And then, even more randomness of pitch, I guess, would be turning the drift up. So just to experiment, let's see how that would sound if we kind of just did. We'll do that, and then we'll put that to random. Turn the drift up halfway. Movement all the way up. Rate. Rate doesn't need to be high, but we'll see how much movement there is. I'll say 4 here. So definitely good for some just random effects and kind of dreamy effects, even if there's not much tonal center or tonal reason behind it. Let's see. A lot of the violin samples are more kind of random. We have, this is another one where it's just kind of muted and then unmuted. So the piano was muted and unmuted, but also the speed of the samples, or the speed of my playing, was changed. So over time, so with more settings, you're going to get more randomness as well. So yeah, that's that one. Then of course any of the samples that have kind of a phrase going on, the octave one. So you already have plain octaves. This is what it sounds like without the engine on. So yeah, I'm getting pretty crazy swirling and dreamy effects, I guess. Let's see. How shifty is that? Now this is where we get into the more random stuff here. I guess what they call aleatoric. this one is a little different. I recorded different trills, I guess is what they're called. Another side note, I'm not a violin player, so I think I'll leave it at that. So what I did was play different intervals, and so they're not consistent, so it adds a little bit of nuance or variation if you play more than one note at the same time. So if you turn that length down, so I mean it doesn't, you know, of course there's a lot of pitch shifting going on and stuff because of the octaves and things like that, but to me it still sounds kind of spontaneously generated, so I think it, you know, can add a really cool effect for coloring things. And then of course we have random violin plucks, which is kind of like the random guitar harmonics from the guitar section. So yeah, it's really easy with these settings. Like I said, just to reiterate, the octaves, rate movement, space over here, and the symmetry, and also the randomness here might help, and position here. These, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These 6 things here can really add to the variation and randomness, but also the drift, of course. But that's going to be more, a little more. It's going to be slower. The randomness isn't so drastic. It's not like it's randomly playing different pitches. But it helps to add even more variation. So yeah, I think that's about it as far as. I mean, in general, these sounds were not. There wasn't really. I didn't really put a big effort and consistency with each sample. So I think in that way it adds a little bit more variation too. I mean, another one is the. I guess I called it moving pluckers, but basically changing the position where you pluck on the guitar. What's it called? Near the bridge. So the closer you get to the bridge, I think that's what it's called, where the strings come up, or where you, yeah. So you get some more of a higher pitched, or not pitched, higher frequencies. The EQ is different. And then when you get further away and you get closer to the where the frets are. I can't remember my guitar terminology. The closer you get to the frets, the sound gets a little more hollow sounding, a little more boomy, less high end. So what I did was constantly change where I was plucking gradually. So you can kind of hear the way it changes. So if you so not as drastic of a variation there, but it's still, it'll be subtle. But yeah, I think that finally is about it. So if you watch this, thanks for watching. Hope you'll check out the instrument if you haven't already. Have a good one.